Hi, everyone. I hope you are doing well. So, today I actually wanted to record a little message around reaching point zero. For those of you that have been on your spiritual path for some time, this is a phrase you'll hear a lot come up in, podcasts, spiritual conversations, and sometimes when you haven't quite reached point zero, you may not understand what's being referred to here. So in this video or message, I kind of want to talk about reaching point zero, what this really means, how you actually get here, and what it actually feels like once you arrive. Now, if you generally look to, spiritual traditions, you'll hear about enlightenment, liberation, divine union with God, having that Buddha-like nature, or simply, a full awakening. Now, each of these terms, while the language kind of differs, they're all pointing towards the same sort of realization that you actually reach. And that is basically returning to point zero. Point zero is, that place of complete presence where awareness is simply resting in itself. It's not something you end up creating, but more so what actually remains when everything else, the noise of the world, the chatter in your mind, actually falls away. Now, to kind of actually explain what is point zero, well, imagine a pendulum swinging almost from one extreme to another. That's kind of what we are doing as far as, we are functioning with our mind. It's actually dividing the reality into the opposites for us, right? We get to experience the good, the bad, the success, the failure, our, egoic self versus our spiritual self. And so what is really happening here is, we are constantly in this division, rocking back and forth. We are at one moment trying to chase pleasure, the next we're trying to avoid pain. We are seeking approval because, that's what seems right, and then we're fearing rejection at the same time. We cling to what we like, and then we resist what we don't. So most people are spending their lives, right, prior to reaching point zero, just moving between these opposites, which not necessarily is a bad thing. That is what a human experience really is. But point zero is so important to you during your awakening because this is kind of where you're trying to get to. Point zero is that stillness, that point at the center of your pendulum. It is the place where you experience peace, you experience, this undescribable sort of joy. It's a complete place of balance, not because life has stopped happening for you, but because your awareness is no longer being pulled in all these different sort of directions based on your human experience. Now, why is it actually so important to understand point zero? Because as long as you have not reached point zero, you are identifying with your physical form. And all of the suffering that we go through as human beings is based on our identities, the, identification that we have with form. We mistake ourselves for the thoughts that keep playing in our minds. And I mean, if once you've started meditation, you know exactly what this experience is like. How difficult is it, especially initially, to get your mind to be still? It's constantly, thinking about something, planning something, even though you aren't focused on that. You're trying to just be still, but it takes you all over. It takes you into different thoughts, emotions, memories, beliefs that you have, achievements that you've, made for yourself, the roles that you're playing, conversations you've had with people. To get to stillness becomes so, so difficult. And you only realize that when you are trying to be still. So essentially, you are in meditation actually trying to get to point zero, where you finally come face to face with the fact that, behind every identity that you've built for yourself, there is something that stands still that has never actually changed. And it is the silent awareness that has kind of always been there in the background. Now, how do you actually reach this point of neutrality, this point zero? Well, the path is actually very simple, but not always easy, right? Of course, you start with meditation, but even throughout your day, some of the things that you can do is, first off, observe rather than react. You want to start off by noticing your thoughts that are constantly always playing in the background instead of automatically believing the story that they're telling you, just getting carried away by those thoughts that are playing in the background. You want to notice them, and without needing to suppress or express them immediately, you want to just bring awareness to what is occurring, and that in itself will start to create the space for that stillness. Now, a second thing that you can start doing is start to let go of any resistance. A lot of people will argue with what's actually occurring in the present moment. And a lot of our suffering actually comes from this. So you want to actually stop resisting what's already in front of you. And you end up freeing a lot of mental space and energy when you do that. Now, you don't have to agree with everything that's occurring, so it's not a form of approval, but it simply basically means you are willing to clearly see what's happening in front of you, and you are creating space between, what's actually occurring and your reaction to it. So creating that space. So first of all, just having that acceptance of what's occurring, and then giving yourself that space to respond appropriately without actually reacting immediately. The third thing that you can kind of do is start to release the identification with form. We talked about all those thoughts that come into your mind. You want to start to notice when that happens and start to ask yourself things like, who is actually experiencing this thought that's actually coming through? Who is aware of the emotions that I'm feeling at this time? With each such realization, you are creating space for yourself to gently, move in the direction of turning towards point zero. And that's what you kind of really want to start to do. So it may not be immediate, it might take you some time, but these are some habits that you can cultivate in your day to day, apart from meditation, that can really help you move towards point zero. Now, what does point zero actually feel like? Now, many people will think, oh, enlightenment is this constant state of bliss, or you're always having these mystical experiences. But really, point zero is actually very ordinary. There is just less mental noise. You are, not in any urgent sort of a place to control your life. You have more inner peace, more inner silence, and you become slower to react and to all that's occurring around you. You understand that it's just a natural unfolding that's taking place, and your involvement in it isn't going to create it's not like you're going to be missing anything if you don't have this very harsh sort of a reaction to what's unfolding. Instead, you're more at peace because there is joy within you. There is this inner stillness and peace within you. And that's the place that you're starting to really act from. There is a quiet sense that nothing is urgent, nothing is missing, and everything is fine just the way that it is and just the way that it's playing out. So basically, you want to envision this point zero as being not that you're no longer a player that's part of the game that is unfolding in front of you, but rather, the emotions still come up, the challenges in life will still be there, but they'll be easier to pass through, almost like the weather moving across an open sky. So you begin to, experience life very differently once you reach point zero. Now, for those of you that are still on your journey to reaching that inner stillness, just remember that point zero is not something you achieve in the future. It is your deepest reality, who you truly already are. It's your true divine nature. Every time you experience presence, every time you experience, just wanting to surrender, every moment you stop identifying with the stories that keep playing in your mind, you're getting closer and closer to reaching that point zero. You are returning to that inner stillness, to that still center. Your spiritual journey was never about becoming something new, but rather just remembering and returning to who you've been all along. Thank you so much for listening. I really hope this was helpful. God bless.